On today's show, we've got part 3 of 5 of my top 30 midseason prospect rankings. And on this show, we're talking about 6 guys, and 4 of them were not even on my radar for the top 30 at the start of this season. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Paddock, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covered this team for 13 seasons, including all as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Paddock. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about the prospects number 18 through 13 of my top 30 Rangers prospects. This is part 3 of 5 in this edition. We're talking about some guys who really just were pop-up players in this Rangers farm system that were really not at all on my radar, at least for the most part. 2 of these guys very much on my radar at the start of the season, throughout the middle of the season, and throughout it entirely. But most of these guys were not really on my radar, and especially this first guy, not the #1 Rangers prospect. That was, and still is, you can probably guess who. I'll talk about that on Friday. But Yeison Morrobel at number 18 on my top 30 prospects list was not on my radar, at least not this year. He was many moons in the past, but lately he has been well off my radar for Rangers prospect status because he's kind of lost his prospect status with a really rough last few years. But Yeison Morrobel just kind of popped up in AA, and I thought, oh, hold on, I know that name. I know who that is. That's a guy who was the Rangers' most, highest paid international signee back in the class of 2021, where he had a really nice debut season from the Dominican Summer League back as a 17-year-old in 2021. I mean, he had an 806 OPS that year, and he looked really good when he first came to the States. In 41 games at the Complex League, he had an OPS that was just shy of 900 and looked really impressive. He was a sweet left-handed swing. At that time, he was still playing center field. He made great swing decisions, but he wasn't really hitting for a whole lot of power, and that was a trend that continued on. The next year, in 2023, he just did not look great. He had a shoulder injury that made him miss most of that season, 37 games and a sub 700 OPS. The next year, repeated the same, was promoted a level to high A, but just did not look all that great. And a 610 OPS. The year after that, a 528 OPS. It just kept getting lower and lower, even though he was repeating the same level from 24 to 25. Last year kind of wrote him off a little bit as a prospect because he was 21 years old in high A for the second straight year, and the numbers had just gotten really bad. And the shoulder injuries, those are no joke. Those are something that can sap your power. And he did not have a whole lot of power to begin with. But this year, in high A Hub City for the 3rd straight year, this is when he figured it out. This is still a guy who has got good discipline of the strike zone. He is more of a corner outfielder now than a center fielder, but hits left-handed, throws left-handed, listed at 6'1", 170 pounds. I think he's a little bit more than 170 at this point. But in 75 games for Hub City, he finally started tapping into that power in games, and also paired that with a really good bat-to-ball skills and really good on-base skills. He had a 370 on base in Hub City, hit batting average just 3 points shy of 300, and slug just 3 points shy of 500. 14 bombs in 75 games down there at Hub City. And he got called up to Frisco, where he has also been very, very impressive. An 867 OPS in Hub City. And in Frisco, his OPS is still north of 800. Batting average is just a few points shy of 300. And the on base is 340 at this point, 460 slug percentage, and 2 home runs, 8 doubles. I mean, 16 home runs on the year, where in his career to this point, he had 13 home runs to this point in his career, which as a professional started in 2021. So the previous 4 seasons, he has more home runs this year than he had in the previous 4 seasons, if my math is mathing correctly, which I'm not entirely sure that it is, but it is late night. And it is a very much a joy to see Yeison Morrobel get himself back on track. This has always been a guy who has known the strike zone very well. That has been his carrying tool. The bat-to-ball skills have been good. The swing decisions have been good. The walk rate has always been pretty darn good. This year, it's still pretty solid. The strikeout rate is below 20%, and the batting average being at 296 on the year combined these two levels. And he's also hitting lefties well. As a left-handed hitter, usually that is not something that you can say. The OPS is about 95 points shy of where it is against right-handed bats, but it's still a very respectable 767 OPS as a left-on-left guy. The batting average is still good. The on-base is actually even better left-on-left than it is against righties. He has just as many walks as strikeouts against lefties, whereas righties, he's got almost 3 times as many strikeouts as walks, which is just a little perplexing, but it speaks to a good approach left on left, which is a difficult thing to do. And seeing him find the success in Double A, he's still very young. When I kind of wrote him off a little bit as a prospect after last year, he was just 21. Now he's just 22 years old. He's still 2 years younger than the average hitter in the Texas League, and it's been basically 3 years that his career has fallen a little bit off the rails. He was pretty comfortably in my top 30 prospects, at least after 2021, and I think after 2022 as well. Maybe even heading into 2023, he started to fall off a bit, but I think the end of 2024, I was like, okay, he's not quite top 30 material, and definitely I know I didn't have him on there last year in the midst of what was a pretty rough year for him, but it's good to see him back on track. He is a guy with that prospect pedigree as a high bonus baby in 2021, and he's a guy who's still fairly young, and even if though his ceiling is a lot lower than it was back in the day, because he is not playing center field, he is still tapping into that power, though, something the Rangers have long looked for from him. It is good to see him get himself back on track. Now, the number 17 prospect in my top 30 is a right-handed pitcher who was not one of the others who was not on my radar heading into this year. That is Jacob Johnson, the Rangers' 11th round pick back in the 2025 draft out of Pearl River Community College in Poplarville, Mississippi. Goodness gracious, there are just some real towns there in that state of Mississippi. But Jacob Johnson, a right-handed pitcher who's listed at 6'3", 165 pounds, was not throwing particularly hard when the Rangers drafted him, but at 6'3", and being below 180 in terms of his weight, you think there's a lot more room for projectability, and he's throwing even harder now than he was when the Rangers did draft him. And the results so far, it's not been a whole lot of starts for him this year, but 11 games, 10 of those starts, 32 and a third innings, 41 strikeouts to a pretty high 5 walks per 9 innings. But he spent time between the Complex League and the Hickory Crawdads, where he is 2 years younger than the average pitcher there at just 20 years old. He has pitched in 3 games. All of them have been starts, but he has only gone 7 innings. I think the Rangers are building him up in his workload. But in those 3 starts and 7 innings, he has not allowed a single run, earned or otherwise. Only 6 hits, only 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. Those are some pretty darn good numbers. And the Rangers still think there is even more velocity to add. Right now, he was sitting around 88 to 91 when the Rangers drafted him. Now he's more 91 to 93, 94, touching 95. And he is a guy who the Rangers still are banking on some projectability for him. He has been putting up pretty darn good numbers against a small sample size to this point, but really a fastball, slider, those are his bread and butter. Both those graded as 55 grade pitches according to MLB Pipeline. The changeup is there, and it's graded as a 45 grade pitch, so a little bit below the average, but something that you definitely need if you are a right-handed pitcher. Having a changeup or something to neutralize those left-handed hitters is something that literally every single starting pitcher that's a righty needs, but good to see him getting on track in a big, big way. The 2025 draft class is looking just very, very impressive from this Ranger squad. Would have been nice to still see Gavin Feen in a Rangers minor league uniform and maybe making this draft class look even better. But I mean, the other prospects in that draft class are looking very, very impressive. Jack Wheeler, who I already talked about earlier this week, Paxton Kling, I also talked about this week, Evan Sierra, I put as an honorable mention. He's been having a really darn good year. Jay McQueen, as the Rangers' last pick in this draft in the 20th round, is having a fantastic year. And not to mention that the top three in this draft of Gavin Feen, AJ Russell in the second round, and Josh Owens, the two-way player, in the third round, getting over $1 million of bonus money because he is a two-way player and has looked just flat out awesome in his first full pro season. I mean, Jacob Johnson could be part of this class looking even better for this Rangers squad. A small sample size, but there's a lot to get excited about for Jacob Johnson. Coming up, we've got the breakout star from absolutely not on anybody's prospect radar to a consensus top 30 guy who has been crushing it and crushing home runs at every level he's played at so far this year. Talk about who that is and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game, and if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every single day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is a fun way to stay engaged on every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has a chance of somebody going deep, and so now is your chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. I'm recording this about a week ago, so the Rangers can totally hit a home run off of insert White Sox pitcher here today. Insert whoever the Rangers have as a hot hitter at this moment, because I don't really know who's going to hit a home run today, but you might know who's going to hit a home run today. If you're ready to play your game, join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers. Make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Shout out to the editor making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and talking about the next to last installment of my top 30 Rangers prospects, and including a couple of maybe the most fascinating prospects in this Ranger system, including one whose name I have actually already mentioned on this episode of Locked On Rangers. But let's get into the number 16 prospect in my top 30. We are halfway done after this one, and it is third baseman Rafe Perich. Now, Rafe Perich was not a guy that was on my radar really at all, and you may be saying, well, Bryce, how was he not on your radar? It's because, well, he was a 7th round pick by the Rangers back in 2024 out of Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and last year was his first full pro season. He did have 9 games back in 2024 for the Down East Wood Ducks, was not really doing a whole lot there, and then last year, still not particularly impressive numbers, good numbers, by the way, at Hickory at age 23. I mean, 58 games there. Just only had 4 home runs, though, at a 725 OPS. Not bad. The on-base was good, and the on-base was also good at Hub City, or at least decent at Hub City, but the batting average and the slug was not particularly great in 38 games there with High A Hub City. That's where he started this year at 24 years old, and question marks about his defense at third base. I saw him at third base, and those question marks aren't quite as loud to me, and they're definitely not as loud as the kind of contact that Rafe Perich is bringing as a switch hitter who is just absolutely obliterating baseballs this year. So far this season, he spent 38 games with Hub City High A and 60 games so far in Frisco. His offense was outstanding in Hub City in exactly 1,000 OPS in those 38 games and 11 home runs. And since he's gotten called up to Frisco, his offense has not really skipped a beat whatsoever. He is a switch hitter, and he does have a strong side. Him as a left-handed bat against righties has been just significantly stronger than him as a righty against lefties. A .333 batting average as a left-handed batter with 22 of his 24 home runs, a 1,081 OPS from the left side, and from the right side, not quite as strong, a 531 OPS, not actually a little bit less than half as good as a right-handed bat. facing left-handed pitching. Again, there's not that much left-handed pitching. It's a smaller sample size, but 89 plate appearances is not a minuscule sample size. But the power that Rafe Perich has added, he has always had good swing decisions. He has always been a guy who can work a walk, and this year he is still doing that while adding a significant amount of power. These are not some wall scrapers. These are not some cheapies. These are not some, some A's ballpark home runs. These are legitimate, just monster shots that he has been pouring on day after day after day. I mean, he has been incredibly consistent from month to month. I mean, outside of the first month of the season, in April, he had a sub 700 OPS, and then every other month since then. Again, I'm recording this on the 18th of August, and so his OPS could have dipped a little bit below that in the week or so from when I record this to when it comes out. But in every single month, from May to June, July, August, so far, he has an OPS that starts with at least a 9. The highest was in May, where he had 11 home runs in the month of May. Are you kidding me? He was on fire and also hitting .327 with his batting average while slugging over 700 for a month, because the man had, again, 11 home runs that month, 5 the next month, 5 the next month, 2 so far in 13 games in August, and every single month, 1142 OPS that month, 988 the next month, 948 the next month, 914 so far in this month. The guy has just been crushing baseballs, and I think he's a decent defender at third base. Now, I don't think he's going to win any gold gloves out there, but his actions look solid, his hands look solid, the arm also looks solid as well, and this is a legitimate pop-up breakout prospect. He was a little bit on the older side when the Rangers drafted him, but this has been some just high quality hitting that he's been doing this season. That is why Rafe Perich is the Rangers' number 16 prospect at the midpoint this season. Now, the number 15 prospect has been on kind of the opposite trajectory of Rafe Perich. It is another guy who has spent a lot of time at AA this year, but not where he was expecting to. This is right-handed pitcher Winston Santos. Now, Winston Santos has had just a really rough last couple of years. Last year, I thought he was going to make his big league debut. I thought he was really on the verge of jumping up and doing something really, really nice at the big league level. And, I mean, it's just been injury after ineffectiveness so far the last couple of years with Winston Santos. A back injury took him out for the vast majority of last year. He did not pitch that many innings, and this year he's pitched more innings, but I mean, the innings have not been high quality. He did make his big league debut. I've talked about it a few times on the show of just how I don't think he was, done any particular service when he came into that big league debut. He was another guy who was just sitting on the major league roster for a long, long time without actually getting into games or even really warming up. It was the 18th of June, his last game in AA before he got called up all the way to the big leagues, and it was the 1st of July before he made his big league debut in a game where he warmed up 3 different times and then still came into a game against the Guardians and did not look particularly sharp, which, again, not that many people would in that scenario. His last few games have been with Round Rock ever since he got sent back down to the minor leagues. He has just been with Round Rock, sometimes starting, sometimes not starting. It's been a bunch of different roles, and he has just allowed a lot of runs. He has been hit very, very hard this year, and he's a guy who I had a lot of high hopes for, especially after 2024 when he was a Futures game participant back that year after a really good year with Hickory and a decent few outings with Frisco. The numbers look, I think, a little bit worse than his actual performance was back in Frisco in 2024, but the last couple years have just been ravaged by injuries, and this year he's been on the mound. He just has not been particularly effective when he's been on the mound, no matter what level. And in Round Rock, he has got an 8.68 ERA in 18 2/3 innings, and in Frisco, he's got an ERA just shy of 7.5 in 42 1/3 innings. This is not a small sample size at this point. He is a guy who has got a really special profile fastball. The velocity isn't going to completely blow you away, but the shape of it has been pretty good in the past. The slider has made some jumps forward, but so far this year, it hasn't really particularly mattered. The strikeouts have been still outstanding. If you want to look for a bright spot there, I mean, in Frisco, he's got over 12 Ks per 9, but averaging over 2 home runs per 9, over 11 hits per 9, and 4.5 walks per 9. That many base runners while giving up that many home runs and that many hits. It is just going to come back to bite you no matter how many guys you're striking out. Unless you're striking out literally everybody else, then you're going to run into some problems. And even if you are striking out everybody else, when you're giving up 2 home runs per 9, 4.5 walks per 9, and 11.5 base run or hits per 9 innings, that is going to get you into some trouble. I still have some hope for Winston Santos as a starting pitcher. Of this group, between him and the other 2 upper levels minor pitchers that I have been frustrated by and have had disappointing seasons, mostly due to injuries and also ineffectiveness, him, Teodo, and Corniell, I kind of all grouped together. Teodo, he is just a bullpen arm at this point, and so his ceiling is lower. I think his floor is higher because I'm more buying that he is going to be a viable big league arm at some point here in the near future, if not like right now as you're listening to this. With Corniell, it's been a lot of injuries and ineffectiveness, and I don't really know what to make of it. I'm losing hope with him as a starting pitcher. For Santos, I'm still holding out a little sliver of hope, and there is one more guy in the upper minors who has not quite disappointed, at least turned his season around. I will talk about him on tomorrow's episode, but this has been a frustrating year for Winston Santos. The talent is still there. He's, again, just 24 years old. It's not like he's, some ancient guy at this point, but it has been for sure a frustrating year for Winston Santos, which is why he is the Rangers' number 15 prospect in my midseason top 30. Coming up, we're going to talk about one other guy who has been the fastest riser in this Rangers system and one of the Rangers' top international signees in the class of 2024. All that and more right after this. Big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break. This back-to-school season, just spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back-to-school shopping experience can be. It starts with a few items on the list, and then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things that you didn't see coming, and it really all adds up fast. When you're buying supplies and you find yourself asking how a calculator became one of the more expensive items in the cart. I was expecting math to start costing me money before school even started. It feels like there is a life lesson in there somewhere, but I'm still trying to figure it out though. When the teenage supply list arrives and every item feels completely reasonable on its own, but then you add them all together and you realize just how much stuff one kid needs for one school year. So remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. Shout out to everyone making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. And make sure you are checking out the Locked On Rangers postcast with the great Jeff Biggs, covering every single game while I am away from this country and away from the sport of baseball. Now let's talk about the number 14 prospect in my Rangers midseason top 30, and that is outfielder Hector Osorio, who is a guy who has just blasted himself onto the scene and been probably the biggest breakout bat in this Rangers farm system this year. This is the furthest from 0 to on the top 30. For guys who are in the system at least, to start this year. Osorio is a left-handed hitting 21-year-old outfielder who also throws left-handed. He plays basically every single outfield position, center field, left field, right field. He's a guy who is not going to be physically imposing, listed at 6 foot, 150 pounds. I would imagine he's a little bit more than that. He is another guy who's made great swing decisions in the past, but has not really hit for a whole lot of power. Last year, he did lead Hickory in the Carolina League in on base with a .393 on base percentage, and his first several years in the minor leagues, his on base had been just absolutely fantastic. As a 17-year-old back in 2022 in the DSL, he had a .462 on base. That was in a very, very small sample size, just 9 games. The next year, first, full-ish season of minor league ball, .466. The year after that, a .456 OPS or on-base percentage as a 19-year-old in stateside ball. Again, last year, great. This year, between 2 different levels in Hickory and Hub City, a .411 on base, batting average of .295, and slugging .544. The power has really come into play for Osorio this year in games in a way that it really hadn't at all up to this point. He's 21 years old, and he has been in professional baseball since 2022. And in those 4 seasons, he had 0, 1, 1, 4 home runs. This year, 21 home runs in 87 games, just shy of 300 plate appearances. So not only is he still racking up those walks, he is racking up those extra base hits in a way that he really had not to any point in his career up to now. He had 15 doubles as well and a triple, just for good measure, 9 stolen bases, and caught stealing 6 times. So the rate of success has not been particularly great. He is not a particularly speedy runner, but this is a gamer. This is a good old-fashioned ball player, a guy who really does not have the physically imposing tools, but he is a guy who will get the most out of every drop out of his baseballing talent, and he is doing so just incredibly well this year. Now, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing him at some point, maybe towards the end if he continues on this trajectory. We'll see him at some point in Frisco, maybe next year. But for this year, this has been a just fantastic breakout season. He spent most of his time in center field, a little bit of his time in right field, 28 games in center for Hickory, and 23 games in right field, a little bit more of a higher percentage of his games in center field in Hub City, 20 in center versus left, 4 in left, 9 in right field. But this has been just a big old breakout year for Hector Osorio, who has been also hitting lefties at a decent clip, hitting 242 with a 356 on base. The slug has been not nearly as good as it's been against right-handed pitching, but again, that's to be expected. A 1,008 OPS against right-handed pitching and a 727 OPS against lefties. That is respectable. It is difficult to be good left on left. Not everybody is going to be Brandon Nimmo, but the bats have been quality there. The walk rate has been good, and sometimes as a lefty, you got to sacrifice power to just occasionally get on base to work those walks and just keep that line moving over to a right-handed bat that can take more advantage against left-handed pitching. But Osorio has just had a fantastic season, been just rising and rising and rising, and I hope his star keeps on rising because this is a fun player to watch. Now, the last guy on this list, the number 13 prospect in my mid-season top 30, the last one I'm talking about today, is Paulino Santana. Now, Paulino Santana is a guy who I think really got his career off to a difficult start because of some of the labels that were put on him, because of some of the comparisons that were put on him. He was compared before he even signed to Julio Rodriguez, and that is just a very difficult comparison to put on any minor league player, especially a guy who really does not have those same quite physical tools as Julio Rodriguez. He is not a guy who is got, been graded out as a potential 80 runner and potential 80 power. These guys made some pretty good swing decisions in the past. This year, it has been a little bit rough for him stateside and full season Hickory. It has been not the best year, but still a solid year. The on base has been good. The slugging percentage has been better. It was not a thing that he was really tapping into in his first couple years, but the swing decisions were pretty darn good, with significantly more walks than strikeouts in his first year of pro ball at 17 in the DSL. He was able to tap into the power for at least doubles and triples, 6 doubles, 4 triples, 20 stolen bases, and a 465 on base, and an 830 OPS with 14 more walks than strikeouts. Last year, between mostly the Arizona Complex League and also Hickory, he was still showing that decent on base, at least in the Complex League, at a 339 OBP, but a little bit less so in 18 games in Hickory, a little bit overmatched, but the season ends pretty quickly for the Complex League, so the Rangers want to give him a few more at-bats, and he was a little bit more overmatched. The strikeout rate was pretty high in Hickory. This year, the strikeout rate has not been quite as high, 121 strikeouts in just shy of 500 plate appearances, but 13 home runs. He's tapping into that power more. The on-base is at 390 at this point, and he's also been playing left field and center field, a little bit more left now than center field, just 26 games in center for the Hickory Crawdads this year, and 77 games in left field, while 8 at DH this year. He has been putting together quality plate appearances in his first year of stateside ball. He was struggling against non-fastballs. That was a little bit of a concern and a problem. This year has not been quite as bad, but the numbers overall speak for themselves. He is still a 19-year-old who's putting up a very good on base and still about a year younger than the average player in that league. I would imagine that he probably stays with Hickory from now until the end of the season. The next year we see him with Hub City in High A. Maybe if he does well there, we could see a late season or maybe mid-season promotion to Frisco. But this is a guy with a lot of physical tools who is not Julio Rodriguez, and I don't think he ever should have been compared to Julio Rodriguez because at his age, I think Julio was already in the big leagues and already maybe even an all-star at that point. A bit of an unfair comp, but this is a good young player, not maybe with the same superstar trajectory that a lot of people were hoping for when the Rangers did sign him. But this has been a good campaign for Paulino Santana. Good to see him tapping into that power while maintaining that high walk rate and that high on base. And maybe, just maybe, we could see a few more games from him in center field, and that would also really help with that ceiling as well. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.